Buddha was in a village, and in this village there was a woman who was in agony. Her child had just died, and it was her only child, and she was crying and just deep, deep sadness, and people wanted to help her, and Buddha's disciples were there, and they said, he's a man of infinite compassion. He's awake. I'm sure there's something he can do. He can probably perform a miracle, maybe awaken and bring this child back to life. So they brought this woman who brought her child to Buddha, and she said, please, Buddha, this is my only child. Can you please bring him back alive? And Buddha said, I'll help you. What I'd like you to do is I'd like you to go to all the homes in the village and find a home where someone has never died. And when you find that home, have them give you bread or rice, eat it, and then come back, and I will give you your miracle. So the woman, very hopeful and grateful, starts going from home to find a home where death had never been. And of course, death, everyone had experienced death at some sort within each and every home. And they were saying, how are you going to find a home that has no death? It's everywhere. It's all over the earth. But she kept having a hope because this was her child. So she kept on with hope, and she kept going and going. And as she went, she was recognizing that slowly descending upon her was this awareness that everybody dies, that there's no way to escape death. And this deep peace and tranquility came over, and recognizing that this is a part of life that none of us gets to escape. As she felt and experienced the suffering of every home that she went to. And so as she went back to Buddha, she said, you gave me the miracle. You showed me the connection that we all have, and that to find peace in the midst of our life. Buddha's first noble truth is life is suffering. Last week, I invited all of you to spend this week to just look at, without judgment, what is your relationship to your own suffering. That we were talking about, it felt a little cold in here last week, and that's like low-grade suffering, when you're cold or hot or you're hungry or you're stuffed, all these little low-grade suffering. And then we have big-grade suffering, really difficult, challenging things happening in our life, or people that we love. And I also asked you to look at your relationships to other people's suffering, people that you know. You can look at it collectively, what our country is going through, the world is going through. Just what is your relationship to suffering? So that's what I was asking you to look at this past week, because this is Buddha's first noble truth. So I wanted us to be conscious, just be aware, because sometimes we sort of push it away. So I just want us to be conscious of that which is existing all of the time. It reminds me of Treya Wilbur when she was going through, when she had breast cancer. She said, I recognize that I'm one with everybody in our wholeness and perfection, and I'm one with everybody in our suffering. Because we all know we are whole, perfect, and complete, and yet every human being has experienced suffering at some point. And I thought that was an incredible gift of the perfection and the imperfection as one. So how can we get rid of suffering? Can we change suffering? I was trying to remember what the title is for today, but I can't remember it. But the basic idea is, are we ready to let go of suffering? Are you ready to let go of suffering in your life? In the Western point of view, often when we say, can we get rid of suffering, often we go into the external. We try to fix it out there. We are a strong... We're a can-do world, especially the United States. We can change it. We will go out and feed the homeless. We'll change organizations and systems and create nonprofits. And all of that is wonderful. I'm not denigrating it. It's just a different orientation. I think often our technology is created to create less suffering. We'll be more connected when we have the internet, and we'll all feel more connected. And what they're also finding simultaneously is that people are getting more isolated and depressed. They're coming up with technology that they're saying, if we can download our personalities or our habit patterns into a chip, we can last as long as that chip lives for like 500 years. So if we can just last for 50 more years, then we'll never have to die or barely have to die. We're trying to avoid suffering at all costs. We're using everything to push against these things that disturb us and that we don't like. And we've done remarkable things with it. So again, this is not either or. We're doing this. The whole reason why we're going through this journey is to look at all the different perspectives, okay? It's not about making any one perspective more right or less than any other. Buddha's perspective was about turning within. That if the suffering was going to end, it'd have to end within us. That we can't change it out there, we can change it within. So they talk about these the Buddha has 4 noble truths. I actually don't particularly care for that because I think of 4 noble truths. When I say that, I think it's going to be 4 separate statements. Really, there's the theme, life is suffering. Then the second one is what causes the suffering. The third one is let's get rid of the suffering. And the fourth one is the new paragraph. Here's the eightfold path to get rid of the suffering. So really, it's suffering and then how to get rid of it. So the first noble truth is life is suffering. The second noble truth is that desire is what causes suffering. For anyone here who's reading Houston Smith's book, World's Religions and the Buddhism, I have a little slight disagreement with him. He said that he said it's desire, but it's only desires for our personal wants. Buddha would want us to have a desire to wake up to God, to know God. Actually, for those of you who have studied with me, this Zen mind, beginner mind, even that, the Buddha would say, no, if you're grasping, so I'm going to look at desire as grasping. Any energy where we're grasping because we're trying to add on to, we're trying to make different. So even if we're grasping at enlightenment, even if we're grasping at trying to be awake, that is not the energy we want. We want right effort, we'll talk about that later, but we don't want the grasping. So, because it's the grasping that causes suffering. And so the third noble truth is to get rid of the grasping. And then we have the eightfold path. So in essence, last week I was talking about suffering is the ideal, and then we have the actual, and then suffering is the gap. So we have all these ideals of what we want our life to be right now in this moment, and then we have the actual of what it is, and the suffering is the gap. I'm giving you the end first. So you'll go through the whole eightfold path, but what the eightfold path is bringing to you is this end. Just accept the actual. Let go of the ideal. It's your desire for the ideal. It's your desire. Whatever your ideal is, that ideal is what's causing the suffering. If you let go of the ideal and just accept where you are actually, where life is in the actual, you will stop suffering. It's separation. Because when we're not accepting what's actually happening, we're saying God isn't there. We're separating ourselves from it, and so we're immediately futurizing. We're saying, well, my ideal is something in the future because it's not what is right now. So I'm in the future. I'm not fully being present to what is here and now, and that the wholeness and the perfection of God can only be found in the present moment. So I've already separated. I'm also identifying with my body-mind. When I desire something different than what is, I have a strong identity with who I am, and so I want something to be different than what it is. That's me. And so we'll find that his idea of how to allow to break free from suffering is to let go of this small identity of all these things that we want and we grasp after and desire. As we let go of this body-mind identity and identify more fully, we'll always have this, but we identify more fully with this infinite I am presence. This I am presence that is ever present, that is fully present and alive right here in this room. It is not limited by any one of our own individual perspectives. It's all our perspectives and beyond. It is all perspectives on this planet Earth right here and right now and transcends it. And we can be in tune to it right now in this very moment. That is where the freedom of suffering, the lightness of being, and the way of joy becomes our way of life. So I've decided, rather than trying to memorize, I didn't want to be back in school, the eightfold path. I have it on paper. I hope you don't mind. Now I'm letting you know, you don't need to write all of these down. If you have the book, The World's Religions, it's in there. You can Google the Buddha's Eightfold Path. You can get it everywhere, so I don't need you don't need to be strict. I want you to just be with it for yourself. So, how do we get to this place where we're accepting what's actual, where we're identifying, moving our identity beyond just our body-mind identity? The first is the right view. We have to get our minds in alignment with what is. If our minds are fighting it and resisting it, we can't see what's happening in this moment. We can't see what's true. So in essence, what he was asking the woman who lost her child and going around to all the other homes, he was shifting her into the right view. Everybody has suffering. Remember, Buddha wasn't interested in when I said this last week, he said his practitioners weren't going to be performing miracles. He was interested in freedom for everybody. Miracles were temporary, and they happened here and there. He wanted freedom for everybody, not just some people. But in order for freedom to be for everyone, you have to accept that even though we can stop suffering here, it's going to show up over here if we're always looking externally. So the right view is sort of similar to what I was saying with Treya Wilbur. I'm one with everybody in their wholeness and their perfection, and I'm one with everyone in their suffering. It's a right view. It's seeing the whole picture, not limiting our ideas or our minds to a limited idea, to my particular story. We're moving out of the body-mind identity to the infinite identity. So we need the right view. And we need the right intent, and this is our heart. Where our heart really longs to know that I can be free of suffering, that I can let go for my good and for everyone else's good. So right view and right intent is the mind-heart connection. We know where our house is divided, we cannot stand, that these two need to be connected. If we're going to shift and free ourselves from suffering, our heart and our mind need to be connected in this. If they are at war, we will not be free of suffering. So it's right view and right intent. And the third one is right speech. This is where we speak with honesty and with kindness. We get to watch what we say. It's not an accident that Dalai Lama wrote his book that his religion is kindness. And if we start just looking at that one thing, I have a colleague who really took that on, and that became their main centering force, which is they will only speak in kindness, and they would never respond to an email until they didn't care if it took a week. Until they could respond from a place of kindness, they won't respond to an email. That the human contact and interactions is kindness. So we have that level of it. And the other aspect of right speech is aligning ourselves with the oneness. We talk about prayer without ceasing. We're right speech when we're doing our affirmative prayers. What if we were living in that right speech every day, all day? That's prayer without speaking. We're speaking in alignment with the truth that the wholeness and the perfection is already here and right now. I'm not going to say that the perfection of spirit is in the future when the conditions and circumstances have changed externally. I know that everything is here now. It's all alive now. Our speech starts aligning with truth. We're going to start finding that just speaking that reality into our world day after day, that prayer without ceasing, that we're going to start shifting inside. That when we speak with that alignment in our language to our friends, to our community, to our colleagues at work, we're going to start feeling the energetic shift within us. And then we have right conduct. That's number 4. That's very similar to the morals that we know. Don't kill, don't steal, don't lie. He also said be chaste, not excessive, sexual. And then he does add no intoxicants, because intoxicants can cloud our judgment. And what's very important to Buddhism is this clarity of thinking, is this ability to see things as they are in every moment. And we can't see if we're intoxicated. If our minds, our senses are a little wobbly, we can't be fully present. The next one's an interesting one. It's right livelihood. And this is where what you do for your living is in alignment with your values and what you believe. I hadn't thought about this personally much, but when I was in college, I had roommates who were engineers, and they were ahead of me. They were a year ahead of me, and they were looking for jobs. And I had a roommate who really strongly believed she did not want to use her engineering training and degree in businesses that worked for the Defense Department. That was her value. But it really limited the businesses that were around Boston at that time were a lot that had defense. She actually would do research to see if they had contracts with the Defense Department, and she wouldn't take them. So she really limited where she could work. And I didn't have an opinion one way or the other. It was just something I had never thought about, that as she was getting this degree, she wanted to have a right livelihood, a job that supported what she believed in. My brother George, on the fast track, Princeton, Harvard Law School, got a great job at a law firm, making lots of money. And he loved environmental law. And then he realized he was on the wrong side of the law, that he was helping corporations get around the environmental laws. He could do that, but he realized that was out of alignment with who he was. So he took a pay cut, about a 3/4 pay cut, to start working for the EPA in just a regular job. But because he was willing to take the pay cut because it was too hard for him. Once he realized he was out of alignment, his livelihood was out of alignment, he had to shift. Now, I also want to say this doesn't mean, I don't know where everybody is, where you're at. Hopefully you all love what you do. I hope you're okay. You okay? But it also doesn't mean you have to shift work or quit work. We have to pay our bills. We have responsibilities. I had a friend when she was at Agape. She had a certain job, and after a while, she was doing a lot of inner work. It felt out of alignment with what she was. She, on her own, started training herself in what she wanted to do, and within that world created an entirely new job for herself. So never had to leave Agape, got as much as she always got paid, but completely self-created her own job when she got clear of what her alignment was. So she never had to lose paychecks, she never had to upend her life, but she got clear, and from her clarity, the power of the presence within us, she moved into alignment. The more we move into alignment, the entire universe is supporting us in doing that. So right livelihood, right effort. Highlight that one. Right effort. So this is the opposite. So this is desire. This is what sometimes we think of right effort, desire. We're putting a lot of effort into it. He wanted to be clear that this takes effort, that acceptance of what is not just something that we just do passively. We have to put the effort into it, this whole practice that he gives, the Eightfold Path, the meditation. It takes effort, and that we need to put effort to it. The idea is that we put effort, but without attachment to the results. That's where the grasping is, I need the results to look a certain way. We become free of the grasping when we just put the effort in, and we persevere without attachment to results. And that we need to do this our whole life. Buddha was clear that he had to continue to do these practices. It doesn't just like it happens and then you're done. This is something we persevere through our whole life. I love how Shunryu Suzuki, at the end when he had cancer, he continued to do his practice, and he said, you don't have to worry about me. I know who I am. He just kept with it. He kept doing, they said he got stricter in his discipline, stricter in his practices, that there's no time where this stops. Because the possibility for suffering is always in every present moment, and it comes unexpectedly and can be expectedly. I think of Reverend Michael when I was in Practitioner 2 training, and I'll talk a little bit more about this in a few minutes. New Thought, often we're training ourselves to create different conditions on the external world or to change habits within ourselves and make our life better. And someone in class was saying, I've just been struggling with this one issue for so many years now, and no matter how many treatments I do, affirmative prayer I do, it's not shifting. I can't get it to shift. And he said to her, which was like this aha moment, he said, and you may never get rid of it. that we're still going to be human beings, and we're going to have these issues and these challenges in our life, and they don't just go away forever. No one's free of this. No one's free of our humanity. What's going to happen, the more we wake up to the truth of who and what we really are, is our identity won't be that problem anymore. See, what happens is we think those problems are who we are, but the more we start waking up to realize that I am, the infinite I am, then it's happening inside the I am within us, but it doesn't own us. Does that make sense to you? It's still there, but it doesn't bother us. It's like a fly flicking, yeah, there's that issue again, but it doesn't overwhelm me. I don't fall apart. Because the I am is so vast, there's no end to it, that when we really tap into it, we recognize it and we see it and we own it, but we're not thrown by it. So everything is not about curing and get rid of every bad thing that's ever happened to us. It's our relationship to it. Right effort. Right mindfulness. You guys are going to like this. Guys and gals, I got to get rid of language, Harriet. Gals and guys. All we are is the result of what we thought. That is a statement from Buddha. All we are is the result of what we thought. Sounds familiar, yes? As we think, so shall we be. As you believe, so shall you be. We can see similarity to Hinduism, the karma, what we create in our mind, as you sow, so shall you reap. Judaism, we just keep seeing the same idea. But for instance, in Hinduism, it's a lot of also what you do. Buddha really tapped into the power of thought, that our thoughts are very powerful, and that it wasn't just what we're creating out there, it's who we're creating in us. It's who we are. Your thoughts are a result of who you are. You are a result of your thoughts. Who we are on this earth, not just what we have out there, but as beings, is a result of what we've been thinking, where we put our attention. So again, the idea is to start breaking free by identifying more as this I am presence, this witnessing presence. Right now, it's in this room, this I am, it's witnessing you. We're not our thoughts. We witness our thoughts, and then those thoughts can change more fluidly, and we can see more clearly. B. Alan Wallace was one of my professors in ministerial school. He very smart, like all our professors. We had half of our class were distant, so we had professors from all over, universities all over the country. He had gone to Amherst, was a philosophy of science, physics, and Sanskrit. He got a degree in all three of those, and then he got his religious studies degree, PhD, from Stanford. Like so many of our professors, he had a ton of information, but his class stood out. His lecture stood out because he was a Buddhist. He had actually been a translator for the Dalai Lama for years. When he spoke, literally I would have this image and sound in my head of a bell gonging. It was so simple and clear. Though he had this vast array of knowledge, bless you, there's a clarity. All of that, the extra stuff gets to the side. And it speaks with that clarity. That's what this mindfulness starts to give us. We start to really see what's going on with our mind and our thoughts when we do this witnessing, this mindfulness meditation, which you can do when you're washing dishes, you can do when you're driving in a car, you can do it right now. Just that part of you that's witnessing without judgment. You can't see the witness, but the witness has always been there. It doesn't come and it doesn't go. It's right with you right now. It's witnessing everything in this room, and it's witnessing you, and it can witness. The more we become conscious, it witnesses our thoughts. It's not our thoughts. And so it starts to begin to get this clarity of thinking that is, to me, unmatched. To me, this is one of the greatest gifts of Buddhism, is the clarity it brings. In fact, again, going back to this woman with her child, he was bringing a clarity of seeing things rightly, seeing things as they are. I have a friend who's, don't worry, not in this state. I always worry when I say it's a friend, people start looking around. No, they're not in the state. But their practice is very devotional, and it's beautiful, but there's a lot of stuff. When we get all in our, you can get all the emotional stuff, there's a lot of goo there. With this, there's just a clarity because it starts getting rid of all that extra stuff. We start to see things. So when I saw a practitioner, I was married once before, and when I first got married, all this anger was arising, and it concerned me. So I went to see my practitioner, and I was also a practitioner student. So I knew what we're here to do, and I wanted to see what was causing the anger, and I wanted to have new thoughts about it. I wanted to shift how I was thinking about this anger. So I went to her to really say, I'm having all this anger. I can't see what's causing my anger. Can you please give me the right thoughts? Basically fix me, because I can't do it myself. And she irritated me, which really good practitioners will. She said, I can't fix this for you. You're going to just keep feeling anger. I'm like, well, that's not your job. And she said, what I want you to do, Harriet, is I want you to witness that anger as it's arising. I don't want you to judge it. I don't want you to even analyze it. I don't want you to sit there because, I love my journaling and writing. No, don't. That's where just witness it. No stuff, no analysis, no judgment, no. Just watch it as it's arising. And so I didn't like it, but I was a good student, so I practiced. Not only did I do that, but I thought, well, let me try this with past situations when anger arose. I would just play out the whole story in my head of before I got mad, what happened in the interaction, and saw the anger rising. And over again, even in my imagination, and then in my relationship with my first husband, I could see all the pain that was behind the anger. I could say, oh, it's from a past life, or I could say, oh, it's from my family. But it doesn't matter, because that's all out there. The fact is the pain was inside of me. I could analyze it till doomsday, figuring out where it came from, but it doesn't matter. The result is the pain was in me. And when that anger arose, it came from this deep pain. And as I could witness it, suddenly this extraordinary compassion, and I didn't try to make it compassion, I just couldn't help it, because I could see clearly. When we see with that clarity, suddenly my heart just expanded. I'm like, oh, every time it's this pain that I feel inside, this sense of unworthiness and value. And it wasn't, these are words and it seems, but it's as you're feeling it, especially when you're practicing it in the moment, as it's happening. So the better I got at it, I could do it as it was happening. And suddenly all the anger disappeared. I didn't have it, just it stopped getting triggered because this deep compassion, and that came from the mindfulness. The mindfulness gave me great clarity about what was happening in every moment. I wasn't clouded with excessive analysis. I wasn't clouded with, well, blah, 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 blah. I just watched. Right mindfulness. It starts to relieve us from our suffering because we can actually see with incredible clarity. And clarity, it brings so much lightness of being. And the last one is right concentration, which is practicing this mindfulness meditation, this awareness all of the time. It's seeing things as they are. And this was Buddha's most important, what he's trying to help us all see. The way we rid ourselves of suffering is to get all of our analysis, all our judgments, all of our attachments of how things should be or how they shouldn't be, all these ideals, get rid of them and just see things as they are. Right concentration, moment by moment. Even if you're judging yourself right now or you're judging something else right now in this room, what would happen if you just let that go? It's not good, it's not bad. It just is. It's just showing up. This is how it's showing up in that moment. This is what's showing up in me in this moment. I might be irritated. I might be happy. That's all right. I can be irritated. I can be happy. It's just what's showing up. My invitation to you this week is to practice this. Because these are just really wonderful concepts, but they don't become alive until we practice them. It's like when I saw my practitioner. She gave me the practice. It seems cool, but until you actually do it, it has no meaning. I just want to remind us as we conclude that the reason why we're doing this whole year of looking at the universal truth principles through the world's religions is to see spirit in all these different perspectives. Where we meet in New Thought and Buddhism is that there's the wholeness and the perfection in every moment, that there's nothing missing or nothing lacking. We say that all the time in our teaching, that we know the invisible presence right now. It is everything is whole, everything is perfect and complete at the highest vibration. Where New Thought differs a little bit is New Thought then says, as this I am presence, as this perfection of the I am, let's allow it to move through and as us to create different circumstances and conditions in our life. So if we're having challenges financially, we can allow the abundance of pure spirit to move through us and shift our finances, or we can allow it to bring greater health or relationships, whatever those areas we want to shift. Buddhism has a slightly different perspective. And I really want to highlight this because one of the things that I hear is we're all saying the same thing. Yes and no. In the absolute, yes. How that absolute gets translated to how we live our life, no. They're very different. Buddhism doesn't say, let's allow it to move through and change circumstances and conditions. Buddhism just says, accept things just as they are. Your first practice is just to accept things as they are. That may seem uncomfortable. You may not like that. I don't know. My only invitation is to at least spend 1 week practicing it, because that's part of the joy of being on this journey. Is, as I've talked about, one definition of spirituality is that spirit is infinite, has infinite perspectives. And the more aligned we are with those infinite perspectives, the more we can sort of shift our states of consciousness to all these different ways of being, the more we start to feel our own infinite nature. So it may not be where you choose to land. I'm always amazed. It's so interesting how people have preferences. There's no right or wrong to this. You may land that this really resonates with you, and you may land that this doesn't resonate with you, but you're not going to really know from a Sunday talk. You're going to know if you practice it. I know some of you already do practice mindfulness meditation. So this week, just for this 1 week, I'm going to invite you to again witness any time that you feel suffering in your life, meaning things are not the way you would like them to be, and or suffering in people that you love, and or suffering in the world around us. And just practice, not judging it, not analyzing it, but simply being the I am and witnessing it. Just witness, oh, this is arising. Here's some emotions I'm having. We're not our emotions. We're not our thoughts. So I can still have emotions. I can still have thoughts, but now I'm witnessing them. Does that make sense to everybody? So I can witness the thoughts, but they're not my thoughts. Just see how that feels. So we have a month and a half left of Buddhism. We can explore it, but it's much more profound if you're just practicing it. At least 1 week. So are you willing to try that with me? Yeah. Thank you. All right. Freedom. But we don't do it with results, but freedom. So in that wonderful practice and excitement, because it really is a wonderful practice, freeing practice, because I don't think we always recognize how heavy judgment, good and bad, right and wrong, it should be different, holds us in bondage. And my hope is that as we practice this, we're going to experience the freedom of that bondage of either or, good, bad, of duality. We have within our community practitioners who've been really working spiritually on themselves for a lot of years, and they've gone through processes to become practitioners. And they're here to serve you in prayer. They're here to serve. They're willing to meet with you. I was talking about meeting with my practitioner. That means she opens with prayer. I was telling her what was going on in my life. She was holding the wholeness with me. She was working with me, and she ends in prayer. It's extraordinary. I always use practitioners. Not always when I have issues. They just keep me in right alignment. They keep me in alignment. In Centers for Spiritual Living, we consider the practitioners the healing arm of the church, of the spiritual community. And we have that in our community, the healing arm of our spiritual community. So we're going to go into prayer, and I'm going to invite our practitioners to stand. And I'm doing this so they're more visible, so you realize they're here. We have prayer box. People put in prayers. People send them prayers on our website. They're here praying after service. You can call and meet with them one-on-one. They are here to support us. They're the healing arm of this community. So if the practitioners could please stand and join me, and we're all going to pray together. Remember, this service is happening inside of us. It's not external. Our freedom of being is within us. It's not external. So we're going into this wonderful, powerful prayer. And that prayer is to not take us externally, but internally to remember who we really are. And I give thanks for all of you who have been doing this work for so many years. I know there's many who are still sitting but have been doing this work for... And we just continue to do it and deepen in it. Strengthen and strengthen and strengthen. Our commitment to remember to be free. To be what we know who we really are, unlimited, infinite beings of light and love. We recognize that there is no separation in this room. There's not me and you. There's only this one extraordinary I amness of pure spirit. And as this I amness is infinite, there's no place where it stops and something else begins, for that would be finite. This infinite presence is infinite. It is in, through, and as all time and all space. It is fully realizing itself in every moment, in every breath of all creation, right here and right now. There is nothing that we need to do, to change, to fix, or to make happen. There's nothing we need to add on to. There's nothing we need to take away. It is always already in its absolute perfection here and now. This is the place where we start. This is the place where we end. And this is the source of everything in between. So let's just take a deep breath and breathe in this reality. Feel into this, we feel those words like awe, gratitude, wonder, amazement. It is extraordinary and beautiful, this presence and this power that is always eternally and infinitely living, moving, and having its being as all of us right here and right now. And for all eternity. It is infinitely generous, it is infinitely kind, it is infinitely good, where there is no opposite, where there is no other. There is only one. So we absolutely stand in this oneness. This oneness that never judges, that never cuts anything off through judgment, but accepts and includes all of creation. It is only from this acceptance and inclusion that we can start to see the wholeness and the perfection. You recognize that sometimes when we judge, it is to separate ourselves from. And so we no longer need to separate ourselves from anything ever, because in the midst and the behind and through and as all of it is this wholeness and this perfection. So we allow the walls to drop around our heart. We allow the separation to heal and dissolve into the nothingness from which it came. Our body, mind of separation dissolving. We are safe. We are safe. We are whole. We are perfect. And we are complete here and now. And so we call forth this wholeness and this perfection in every area of our life. We open ourselves to our financial life, our work life, our relationships, our health, physical, emotional, and mental, in all aspects. We open our hearts and we see the oneness and the perfection in everything. Any place where we want to cut off and say that's not enough, we see the wholeness and the perfection even in the not enoughness. We see the wholeness and the perfection in those things that we may judge as bad. We see all of it as the life of God. There is no separation ever. It is all this one power. It is all this one presence all of the time. We can never be outside of it. We are here as spiritual truth warriors, powerhouses of standing in the awareness of the absolute presence. We are it now. And as we know this for our life, we know this for our friends, for our family, for our community, for our workspace, and we know it for our country. We know it for this world. We have no limits in what we call forth as the wholeness and the perfection. There's no wall. It is all the goodness and the power of God. In any area that we feel that is out of the oneness, that is separated, let's just take a moment, a silent moment. Any place where we feel like It's other. Anything that we in our mind have said is other, a person, a circumstance, a situation that's other. And let's just take a moment to see the wholeness and the perfection of God in that other. Anything in our own life, physical health, relationships, finances. We see it as other, as wrong. See the wholeness and the perfection now. And it is in this seeing that we are set free and new life is restored, breath by breath and moment by moment. For this wholeness and this perfection that is newly restoring itself into form even now as we see the truth, hold the truth, and be the truth. I give thanks here and now. I celebrate this awareness, this consciousness, the power of this consciousness and its extraordinary grace showing up in our life in ways we can't even begin to imagine. And it is in deep and abiding joy that I release this word into the law of life, knowing that as we have seen it, felt it, and known it in our heart, in our mind, in our soul, it is done. And I invite us all to say together as one.
So it is. So it is. So it is. Amen. 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 So it is.